The sky over Eldara XIII split like a wound, bleeding fire. The clouds burned as the horizon screamed, and the colony beneath, once a sanctuary of children's laughter, hydroponic farms, and slow-churning turbines, was silenced in an instant. Survivors did not see what came from the void. They only saw the aftermath. Blackened sky, a stillness like the vacuum of space, and glass soil where homes had stood. The distressed beacon Olds Buttering managed to send a signal laced with static and grief, bouncing off relay stations no longer manned, echoing into the dark like a whisper into the sea. It said only this: Eldara XIII is lost. Civilians down. Unidentified hostiles, please remember us. Somewhere far from that dying world, on a medical freighter drifting beyond the edge of Orion's arm, a childlike voice repeated in fragments. Over the comms, a lonely signal, a plea. A memory trapped in a machine. Commander Elaine Yaros awoke from cryo with her bones aching like sorrow. Her crew of 6 stirred gradually around her. They were a patchwork unit, a medic haunted by war, an engineer whose daughter was born in the colony now lost, a diplomat stripped of purpose after Earth's council fractured. This mission was never meant for violence. They were humanity's response teams, those who came not with guns, but with help. And yet, even now, their ship shuddered as it received a response ping from the ruins of Eldara XIII. It shouldn't have been possible. There was no one left. No one, but something in orbit around the colony's remains. A small ship floated amid debris, its surface shimmering like oil in water, not reflecting starlight, but absorbing it. It was shaped not by human hands, nor by any known species in the Orion Coalition. And from within it came one signal, simple, rhythmic, and slow. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even communication. It was breathing. Elaine stood in the comms chamber, the glass interface glowing pale blue around her, and stared at the signal playback looping in their systems. She listened to the uneven pulse like a heart struggling to beat. Against all odds, something had survived. But it was not. Human. As her team prepared to approach the strange vessel, they found it had already opened. No weapons, no guards. Just a corridor lit by bioluminescent veins, and a smell of ozone and something ancient. Inside the ship was not one of the attackers, but someone left behind, wounded, dying. Not in the way humans died, but in a manner of unraveling, like a story being forgotten. The creature sat in silence, long limbs folded like broken wings. Its skin was like dark resin, cracked and leaking streams of light. A mask, or perhaps a face, turned toward them with eyes that blinked sideways, and when it spoke, it did not use words. It projected memories. Not images, but feelings, suffering, regret, fire, betrayal, loneliness, over and over again. The engineer yelled and fell to his knees as the wave hit him. He saw his daughter, Marin, smiling as she picked flowers by the colony's southern ridge. He saw her burnt shadows scorched into the dirt. He screamed until his voice broke. The creature's head bowed lower, as if in mourning. The others stepped back, their instincts rising. Was this a trap? A final weapon from the invaders? Or a refugee of something worse? Elaine, heart hammering like a war drum in her chest, stepped forward alone. She knelt beside the thing and reached out, not with a weapon, but with her hand. The moment her skin met the creature's broken shell, a pulse of warmth spread from it, not electric, but emotional. It wasn't begging for rescue. It wasn't trying to deceive. It was asking to be understood. In that instant, Elaine felt something terrible and pure. A glimpse of a galactic war no one had known about. A genocide older than human memory. A secret buried under layers of silence. And then the creature collapsed. Not dead, but unraveling faster. Its light fading. Elaine whispered to it as her crew looked on, confused and afraid. I don't know what you are, but if you didn't destroy that colony, then someone worse did. And I promise you, we'll find out who. Behind her, Yalan clutched his daughter's last drawing in trembling fingers. The ship's eye picked up the first coherent message from the dying alien. It said, "They will come for you next." The humans looked at each other in silence, knowing that whatever had happened on Eldara XIII was not an end, but a warning. Asterisk, Elaine. Didn't sleep after the encounter. None of them did. The silence that had followed the alien's collapse was louder than anything the freighter's engines could make. It wasn't death, not exactly. The creature still pulsed faintly with internal light, like coals long after a fire, but something was broken inside it, unraveling like a mind coming apart thread by thread. Elaine sat beside it for hours, her gloved fingers occasionally brushing its shoulder. Each time, the creature projected flashes of something, half-formed thoughts, memory fragments without language. They were images made of sensation. Children running through yellow grass, towers burning, a hand held, then lost in smoke. And underneath it all, fear. Not just fear of death, but of being misunderstood, erased. Judge Elaine avoided the medbay entirely, unable to look at the creature that wasn't responsible yet, sat so near the memory of his daughter's smile. He sat in the ship's maintenance. Crawl space, fingers trembling over wires that didn't need fixing. Why are we even talking to it? He hissed over Combs. It's one of them. It was there. His voice broke. We lost everyone. Elaine wanted to tell him she understood, that she saw his pain. But understanding and fixing were not the same thing, and words were brittle things when grief boiled in the blood. Instead, she spent her time in the medical bay with the medic Nia, a soft-spoken woman who had stitched soldiers back together on asteroid fronts where the only anesthesia was a bullet to bite. Now her hands hovered over alien biology, her scanners confused, useless. It's not dying the way we die, Nia said quietly, tracing the light lines across its body. It's like memories are its organs, identity is its pulse. Whatever happened out there damaged its core self. I'm not sure it'll ever recover. Elaine watched the creature's chest rise and fall. It had no mouth, no lungs as they knew them, and yet it breathed. There was a fragility to it, a stillness that reminded her of old war survivors who flinched when someone laughed too loud. And still it tried, weakly, to connect. The pulses of emotional communication never stopped. It kept sharing. It kept reaching. After 40 hours, the creature opened its eyes again, one at a time, dim as dying stars. Elaine was there, her exhaustion painted in gray across her face. The creature reached toward her, fingers like long branches trembling in the air. She took its hand without flinching. Suddenly, she wasn't in the medbay anymore. She stood in a field beneath a sky with 3 suns, the grass purple and whispering, as strange birds wheeled above. A city stood beyond, spiraling towers made of liquid glass and music. Around her were people, not humans, but tall, gentle figures, sharing dreams with each other through light and memory. The creature had a name here, though Elaine could not. Speak could only feel it, and then fire. Ships above, so many they blotted out the light. Weapons that didn't destroy buildings, but scrubbed history. Memories turned to static. Whole lifetimes ripped out of the species' collective mind. Elaine turned and saw children screaming, clutching their heads as their own names were erased. The vision ended with a jolt. She gasped, eyes wide, hands still. Clasping the aliens, it whispered in thought feelings. We were not the destroyers. And she knew, in her marrow, it was telling the truth. The real enemy who ever had attacked Eldara XIII was still out there. And worse, they were good at making it look like someone else had done the deed. A false flag. A lie carved in ash. Elaine went to the bridge, her voice hoarse as she addressed her crew. This being isn't the enemy, she said. What we saw on Eldara XIII, it wasn't their doing. They were victims too. Whatever did that, whoever sent that destruction wanted us to believe it came from them. They wanted humanity to retaliate. Blindly, Yellen looked up, eyes hollow. Why would anyone do that? Neo responded quietly. Because if we strike back at the wrong enemy, they can finish the job while we fight ghosts. The silence that followed was thick with implication. They were alone, stranded with something fragile and broken, and the universe had just become bigger, darker, and far more cunning than any of them had dared to imagine. The AI chimed suddenly, interrupting the tension. Long-range array has. Picked up movement, vessels inbound, 6 unknown signatures. Elaine stiffened. She turned to the viewport, already seeing distant stars being swallowed by moving shadows. The creature stirred on the medbay table and projected a single, cold, emotion through the ship, warning. They were no longer just rescuers. Now they were witnesses and targets. Asterisk. The ship drifted in the silence between worlds, running dark as the 6 unknown vessels closed in like vultures circling wounded prey. Lights dimmed, engines were cut. Breath was held. The crew huddled together in the lower maintenance decks. Heat packs pressed to their skin to fight the cold of power-down protocols. Elaine sat with the alien, who they now called Ashen, after the way its thoughts felt, burned yet glowing from the old. Embers of memory that refused to die. Ashen's body was weakening. The light inside him flickered unpredictably, and Nia feared that without a source of memory resonance, whatever that truly meant, he would cease entirely. Not die, but vanish, as if he'd never existed. As if nothing he'd lived or felt would be remembered. Elaine stayed close. They didn't speak in words. Instead, Ashen shared feelings, impulses, aching bursts of regret, moments of distant joy, fragments of a culture that valued remembrance as survival. Every time she touched him, she felt less alone in the galaxy and more understood than she had on Earth. Surrounded by bureaucrats and worn-out generals. It wasn't that Ashen was human. He was alien in every sense, biologically, cognitively, spiritually, but the shape of grief was universal. The ache of loss, the desperation to protect a fading legacy, the terror of being blamed for sins, not your own, all of it resonated between them. Elaine began to dream when she touched him. Not dreams of Earth, but dreams from his life. A mother figure made of woven light humming a tune in a 6-note scale. A communal dance where memories were spun into the air like ribbons and caught by laughing younglings. A love that had ended in flame. Ashen had once been a historian, a guardian of stories. That's why the attack on his people had nearly destroyed him. It hadn't just killed bodies. It had silenced entire lives. Elaine watched from a distance, his anger a coiled thing, but it was softening. Slowly, it cracked. Just a little, when Ashen sent him a memory without permission, an echo of Marin. His daughter picking alien flowers in a recreated field within Ashen's fading mind. Yalin wept not in fury, but in mourning, and whispered a thank you he didn't yet understand. As the enemy ships drew nearer, cloaked in a shroud of false peace, the crew argued. We should flee, Nia said. We're outgunned and carrying a diplomatic incident in our medbay. But Elaine shook her head. If we run, we lose the truth. Ashen holds the key to what really happened on Eldara XIII. We owe him more than fear. And then something shifted. Ashen, shaking and dim, reached out and projected a new memory, no longer only grief, but a plan. The image came like a holographic poem. The layout of the ship, the frequency bands the enemy ships couldn't detect. The dormant communication relay in orbit above the ruins of Eldara XIII. It was a desperate gambit, but it offered a chance not to fight back, but to warn Earth, to tell the truth before war began. Elaine stared at the alien, stunned. You're helping us survive. Ashen's response was simple, but devastatingly human. Because he listened, the crew fell silent. No one spoke for a full minute. The warmth of that word listened was like a balm. In a galaxy of noise and violence, that someone, something, still valued being heard over being feared. It struck them deeper than any tactical calculation ever could. All right, Jalin finally said, his voice rough. We do this together. The ship powered. Up in stealth. They would drift under passive cloak, using Ashen's coordinates to slip past the enemy ship's blind arc, reach the comms relay, and send a single untraceable burst toward Earth's fleet net. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. Before they left, Elaine stayed beside Ashen one more time. His light had faded further, his body trembling like a candle about to die. She reached out, her fingers brushing his, and felt a memory rush over hers this time. Her father's voice reading old stories in the dark, her first mission to a dying outpost, her oath to serve not with conquest, but with compassion. Ashen didn't speak, but he shared the feeling. The bond had become mutual. Not human and alien, just two souls remembering what it meant to matter. Asterisk, asterisk, but silence in deep space had a weight to it, like the breath just before a confession. The freighter glided through the shadow of the ruined relay station, its darkened hull masked by debris fields left from the colony's last desperate attempt to send out a cry for help. It was here that Ashen had led them, not to safety, but to memory. What remained of the relay wasn't just a satellite. It was a fragment of an old galactic archive, a remnant from a time when knowledge was shared between stars like fire passed between tribes on a cold night. Elaine floated through the relay's decompressed access chamber, her mag boots barely making contact with the fractured panels beneath. With her came Ashen, enclosed now in a containment field that Naya had reprogrammed to stabilize his decaying thought patterns. His light was faint, blinking in slow intervals, but he guided her, not with words, but with direction steeped in intent. The deeper they went into the relay's core, the more she felt it, not fear, not hope, but truth pressing against her mind like a tide ready to break. Then she found it, a black box, hidden behind a shattered console, ancient, burned, but still alive in its way. Elaine connected her data tool, and Ashen flared for a moment, his energy bleeding into the system like a key fitting an old, forgotten lock. The screen lit up with a log, not just of the attack on Eldara XIII, but of what came before it. Video fragments, heat maps, communication intercepts, all showing a single horrifying pattern. The attackers had been human, not the council-approved fleets, not the peacekeeping wings, but a faction, a secret offshoot known only in code, Project Emberfall. A rogue element buried so deep in Earth's military archives that even most admirals didn't know it existed. Their mission had not been defense, but provocation. They struck first, silent, precise, and then vanished, leaving traces that mimicked alien technology, false signatures, planted bodies. A perfect crime disguised as vengeance. Elaine's blood ran cold as the pieces assembled in her mind. Emberfall had intended for humanity to retaliate. They had burned Eldara XIII themselves to spark a war against the Coalition's fringe species. Not out of fear, but greed. The sector was resource-rich, lightly defended. War meant expansion. War meant control. War meant no one asking why the relay had captured all of its communications intercepted by the old archive net. Conversations between Emberfall operatives laughing over tactical efficiency. Logs of human-made weapons disguised to look like Ashen's kind had fired them. They had designed the enemy, painted them with blood, and waited for Earth's righteous fury to do the rest. Elaine staggered back from the screen, her breath shallow. This was bigger than any war she had prepared for. This wasn't just genocide. It was manipulation of humanity's soul. A deception so deep it risked transforming every virtue they held: compassion, defense, unity into tools of horror. Ashen touched her shoulder gently. He did not blame her. He did not flinch from her reaction. Instead, he sent her a memory not of his people's death, but of a small child learning to record dreams into light. Her father telling her, "Remember everything, for memory is the only way we live twice." Elaine swallowed hard. "We have to get this to Earth, the truth, before Emberfall moves again." Mia's voice cracked over the comms. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "One of the approaching ships, it's broadcasting a human signal. Stealth fleet serial code, not council, black flag." Elaine's heart stopped. Emberfall found us. On the screen behind her, the logs kept playing. Ashen watched quietly as humans discussed which colonies would be acceptable sacrifices. To maintain the illusion of alien hostility, he didn't weep. His people had no tears. But his light dimmed in a way that spoke volumes. There was no longer any doubt. Humanity hadn't just been blind. They'd been turned into a weapon, and now someone had to stop the next shot from being fired. The enemy didn't fire immediately. That, more than anything, chilled Elaine to her core. The black flag Emberfall ship emerged from the dark like a shadow given shape, its silhouette flat and faceless, built without the honor of markings or windows. A ghost designed to kill in silence. It didn't hail them, didn't broadcast intentions. It simply drifted closer each passing minute, a noose tightening around their necks. On the bridge, the crew bristled with tension. Mia's hands hovered over engine controls. Yalan stood by the emergency purge switch for the black box data drive, his jaw locked tight. "If they board us, they'll erase everything," he said. "The footage, the logs, Ashen, they'll make sure we vanish, just like Eldara XIII. Elaine knew he was right, but she also saw the fear behind his anger, the way he couldn't stop clutching that folded drawing from his daughter, the way he looked at Ashen not with hate now, but with sorrow. Pain recognized pain, and there was no armor thick enough to keep it out forever. "We don't let them get close," Elaine said. "We don't run, we broadcast, right now." Ashen, barely conscious now, sent out a final pulse of guidance coordinates to a derelict relay dish on a nearby asteroid. Just one light jump away. The dish was old, nearly dead, but still connected to Earth's subspace archive grid. One chance to send the truth. One fragile, fraying thread of hope, but activating it would expose them. If they turned on their engines, even at minimum power, the Emberfall ship would detect it instantly. They'd be chased, caught, maybe destroyed, maybe worse. They all knew it. Still, Elaine didn't hesitate. "Prep the jump," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "We make a break for the dish. We send the message. And we make it loud." Yalan stepped forward. "We'll never outrun them. Even if we make it, they'll trace the signal back. I know." "So what's the plan?" he asked, but he already knew. He saw it in her eyes. Elaine turned to Ashen, who lay in his containment field, his body dimmer than ever, the pulsing light of his thoughts nearly gone. "I need one last memory," she said gently. "Something undeniable, something only you can give them." Ashen stirred faintly. His fingers lifted, and then the pulse came sharp and tense, flooding her mind. She saw it all, the massacre of Ashen's people, not as a dream, but through their eyes. Children ripped from memory, cities turned to forgetting. The sound of names unspoken because no one was left to remember them. And then Emberfall. Human ships, logos erased. Orders read. Laughter in the silence after slaughter. The vision was so powerful it left her gasping. She transferred it directly into the data drive, alongside the logs, alongside the black box. A truth bomb. One transmission that would shatter the lie if it reached Earth.Jalen nodded grimly. I'll get the signal rigged, but we still have to keep them busy. Elaine didn't answer right away. Then she turned to Nia. You'll take the ship to the dish, broadcast the data, get it out. And when it's done, go dark, drift, hide, stay alive. Nia looked up, confused. Wait, you're not coming? Elaine smiled, soft and hollow. I'll take the shuttle, loop back. Pretend it's me carrying the data, draw Emberfall off. Give you the time you need. Jalen's voice cracked. You won't outrun them. I don't have to, Elaine said quietly. I just have to make them believe I've got what they want. Ashen, flickering now like the last star in a dead sky, reached for her. The touch was weak, but she felt it. Still, a single emotion passed into her Trescolon sacrifice, a bond forged not in blood, but in choice. The crew split. Nia took the helm. Yalem loaded the memory package into the drive. Elaine kissed Ashen's head gently as she passed, the way one kisses a sleeping child before a storm. Then she entered the small one-man shuttle, eyes burning with determination. Freighter jumped to the relay dish, engines howling silently in the void. Elaine's shuttle peeled off, its coms flaring like a signal fire. She broadcast false encryption keys, lures, fragments of memory data wrapped in bait. This is Commander. Elaine Yaros, I have proof of Emberfall's crimes. Come get it. The Emberfall ship turned, followed her. Nia wept softly as she watched the blip disappear from sensors. The dish loomed ahead, ancient and broken, but still standing. Ashen's light faded one last time, and the truth prepared to. Fly dot asterisk asterisk space around the shuttle glowed faintly, like the last breath before drowning. Elaine's fingers trembled as they danced across the control interface, weaving the illusion tighter, boosting false transponder echoes, amplifying the signal. Noise from the data cache now hidden aboard the fleeing freighter. She was alone in a craft barely larger than a coffin, no weapons, no shields to speak of, only a heartbeat and a lie. But it was a beautiful lie, one powerful enough to save a truth. Behind her, the black flag Emberfall ship surged forward with monstrous grace, no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be anything but what it was, a predator born of Earth's worst ambition. Its silence was its cruelty, no threats, no demands. It simply came, confident and cold. It had chased ghosts before. It would erase her easily. And Elaine welcomed it. Inside her, a memory stirred. Ashen's touch, not gone, but echoing his species' final whisper, bound into her mind. He had given her his last memory not as a message, but as a weapon. If she was to die, it would not be in vain. She would show them. The shuttle systems screamed as a proximity alert flared red. Target lock confirmed. The Emberfall ship didn't miss. They'd likely already charged their weapons. She had moments left. Elaine inhaled slowly, then hit the last command. A final transmission, massive, beautiful, raw burst from the shuttle's array like a star igniting, not the real data. That was already on its way to Earth aboard the freighter. This was Ashen's memory, amplified and sharpened like a blade. She didn't know if they'd see it, or if it would mean anything to them, but if they felt even a fraction of what she had, maybe, just maybe, something would crack. A visual exploded in space. Not light. Not sound, emotion, a projection from the dying mind of an alien species. Child running through a field of violet fireflies, a hand reaching out in friendship, a mother's voice whispering hope. Then the sky tore open, warships, fire, and screams. Of names no longer remembered. For 3 seconds, the black flag ship hesitated. The killing machine blinked. That was all she needed. Elaine launched the decoy pod glowing hot with falsified memory cores and encrypted drives. The Emberfall ship fired. The blast was surgical, merciless. It tore through the pod and the upper hull of her shuttle, shattering. Metal and flame into a debris cloud meant to be a burial. But not all of her was there. In the final second, she had ejected in a micropod, crippled, spinning, no more tricks. Just drifting life in a dead void. The Emberfall ship moved in close, likely scanning the wreckage, ensuring no leak had survived, but the real data had already passed beyond reach. On the edge of a forgotten asteroid, the freighter had sent its message. The truth now raced toward Earth at the speed of desperation. On the freighter's bridge, Nia held her breath, watching the signal bars pulse. Each ping confirmed the memory files were transmitting. Not just documents and logs, but feeling. Ashen's legacy, his grief and love. His pain and honor. Humanity would feel all of it. Back in the cold dark, Elaine floated unconscious, oxygen failing. Her breath came slow, each one thinner than the last. No one was coming. No rescue expected. Just stars and silence, But then something changed. The Emberfall ship stopped moving. Its guns did not fire again. It hung there, above the wreckage of its deception, as if confused. No alarm, no pursuit. Only stillness. Perhaps they had seen the memory. Perhaps something had broken inside one of them. Or perhaps they had simply lost their target, and then, without warning, the ship turned dot and retreated dot. It left the wreckage behind. It did not report. It did not finish the job dot. It simply vanished dot. Elaine, barely alive, drifted deeper into the void. Her final thoughts weren't fear. They were of Ashen's world, the field of soft grass and children who remembered each other by name. She whispered, without knowing if anyone could hear, "Let them remember." And far away on Earth, alarms began to sound as the transmission burst through the security net. Ashen's story had arrived. The signal hit Earth like a lightning bolt in a stormless sky. It bypassed security firewalls, confused AI protocols, and overrode encrypted broadcasts. Every major fleet command, every political terminal, every civilian feed saw the same thing. Cascade of memories not stored in pixels or language, but in feeling. The broadcast was not just information. It was experience. It could not be denied. It could not be reasoned away. The human mind, so used to filtering tragedy through headlines and footage, could not shield itself from the rawness of it. Across Earth and its 100 colonies, billions of people stopped in mid-step and mid-sentence. Children dropped toys. Soldiers let rifles hang. Diplomats wept openly in front of stunned crowds. And in their minds, they walked the fields of a long-dead world. They saw a civilization that sang its history, that gave names the weight of light, that remembered each. Joy with reverence. They saw fire. They saw betrayal. And then they saw themselves. Emberfall had lied. The attack on Eldara XIII had been orchestrated by human hands, carefully, coldly, with precision. The memory was irrefutable. It named names. It showed faces. Officers who had stood before the people as defenders were now exposed as architects. Of war dot, and through it all, one message kept returning, again and again. We were not the destroyers. The council fractured within hours. Emergency trials convened. Emberfall's hidden files were cracked wide open. Arrests were made. Whistleblowers stepped forward. Some admirals resigned in shame. Others disappeared, likely to avoid the rage. Now rising from the people who had trusted them. But the truth, the undeniable truth, was out, and it had come not through bombs, or fleets, or threats. It had come through empathy. The freighter crew was found 3 days later by a neutral patrol. Near Saturn's rings, barely clinging to power, hidden in asteroid shadow, Yalin was injured. Mia was unconscious. Ashen had faded fully, his containment pod now dark. But the memory crystal he had etched into the freighter's hull still glowed. Waiting to be seen, they were taken back to Earth, not as fugitives, but as witnesses. Ashen's body was honored. In a new way, his light, preserved and stored in the Hall of First Contact. Not as a trophy, but as a symbol of what could happen when someone trusted instead of attacked. And when someone listened instead of judged. As for Elaine, she was found. A week later, floating between the moons of Vespera Prime, her pod cracked, her vitals near zero. It took a full day to stabilize her. When she woke, her first word was a whisper, Ashen. When they told her what had happened, that the message had reached Earth, that Emberfall had fallen, that people had felt the truth she carried, Elaine simply closed her eyes and for the first time in many years, cried, not out of pain, but because it had mattered. In the years that followed, humanity changed, not perfectly, not quickly, but meaningfully. Warships were rebranded as peace envoys. Colonies once built on conquest opened schools for cross-species. History, memory became sacred. The phrase, let them be remembered, was etched onto statues and spaceports alike, honoring the fallen of Eldara XIII and the world Ashen had lost. But the most remarkable change wasn't institutional. It was personal. People began listening more, looking longer, asking before assuming, because somewhere out there, among the stars, was a voice that had reached into the deepest shadows of human fear, not to strike, but to connect, and it had. Worked. In the quiet corners of museums and galactic embassies, Elaine's story, Ashen's story, was passed on not as myth, but as memory. A truth carried not in data, but in heart. A story of a dying alien who shared his soul, of a human who chose to listen, and a war that never came, because someone dared to believe in something better. Humanity, at its worst, had burned worlds, but at its best, it remembered. And it changed.